South Korea's acting president, Han Duck-soo, back on the job after being cleared of any constitutional wrongdoing related to President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law. His first act was a call for calm.
We are experiencing tremendous conflict, but we all share the same wish for this country, which we worked hard to build, to continue to develop and prosper.
Supporters and detractors of Yoon had hoped the ruling would shed light on the impeached president's fate. The ruling avoided mention of whether or not the declaration of martial law breached the Constitution, which means there is still no clear indication of how President Yoon's ruling, which is still being deliberated by the court, might play out. The opposition Democratic Party responded with dismay as the party's headquarters was moved to a tent in downtown Seoul's main protest area. Its leader called on the court to speed up the decision on President Yoon.
As the court delays its ruling, unrest and conflict are erupting across the nation. A serious confrontation is drawing battle lines among the public. What began as a psychological civil war is now escalating, with growing signs that the country may be heading towards a physical civil war.
South Korea's largest trade union is threatening to stage a general strike later this week if the Constitutional Court does not set a date for its ruling on President Yoon's impeachment by Wednesday. Jack Barton, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
For more on this political crisis in South Korea, let's speak to Woong Koo, who's the founder and editor of Korea Exposé, an online magazine specializing in Korean news. He's also a former lecturer in Korean studies at Yale University. Thank you so much for joining us from Seoul. How do you view this ruling on the acting president, and how do you see the Constitutional Court's decision influencing the upcoming ruling on President Yoon's impeachment?
Well, there were always questions about whether the prime minister, aka the acting president, really deserved to be impeached in the first place. The reason the opposition decided to do so was based on the decision by the prime minister to not appoint 3 judges to the very constitutional court that today rejected his impeachment. And today the court said there is no ground for it. And this is, in fact, the 9th time that the Constitutional Court has rejected an impeachment motion brought on by the opposition against the government official. So clearly, this is a blow to that side of the Korean politics. It also means that we are heading into a territory where nobody really knows what kind of decision we can expect on the case involving the president himself.
Right.
Back in December, when he declared martial law, there was an overwhelming sentiment in the country that he would be ousted. But right now, given how long this decision is taking, and with the decision involving the prime minister as well, nobody really knows how the court will rule in the end.
Yeah, but separate from the Constitutional Court's impeachment hearing, President Yoon is also facing a criminal trial, right? Do you think this could result in a prolonged political deadlock, and what would that mean for South Korea's governance?
That's a good question, because this, in fact, is unprecedented in the modern history of the country. No sitting president has undergone a criminal trial while in office. So if Yoon is not ousted from his office as president, then he will essentially be going to a criminal court as somebody accused of insurrection. And that scenario itself is something that nobody has seen, so we don't know how this will unfold. But it is safe to say that the courts will be under enormous pressure in coming to a decision regarding how they can rule on a case such as this.
Yeah. And so what effect is this having domestically, and also given South Korea's importance in the region, both economically and, from a security perspective in East Asian security? How have the regional actors like China, Japan, and North Korea responded to this political uncertainty?
That's a good question. In fact, The fact that we do not have a leader in place to decide on important matters of the state is essentially creating so much doubt about the direction of the country. And this we see in the way that the Korean currency won has lost incredible amount of value since that martial law in December. There has also been 2 days ago a high-level meeting between the foreign ministers of the 3 East Asian countries, namely China, Japan, and Korea in Tokyo. And while they pledged to foster greater collaboration, people inside South Korea itself thinks that without really knowing who is in charge, such direction in diplomacy cannot easily be decided. And this is also true when it comes to dealing with Washington currently under Mr. Trump for the second time.
I was going to ask you about that, in fact, what impact the crisis is having on South Korea's diplomatic relations with the U.S., especially at a time when the Trump administration's recent tariffs are posing a significant challenge to South Korean manufacturing.
Absolutely, because Korea has traditionally been considered one of the closest allies of the U.S. And what has been noted is Korea is now standing out as one of the few countries where there has not been a direct high-level communication between South Korea and the U.S., namely Mr. Trump. So there is clearly that absence of a figure who could very well be necessary. But even if given the way that the current case is unfolding and the speed that is taking the Constitutional Court in reaching a decision, this kind of political and diplomatic uncertainty will continue for quite some time, even possibly until June.
Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for talking to us. Woong Koo, founder and editor of Korea Exposé, live there from Seoul.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.